Hello, hello, Star Family. I'm Michael. This is One Sky Astrology, and this video is going to take a look at the lunar cycle between September 2nd and October 2nd, 2024. In this video, we'll examine the new and the full moons in some detail, as well as the transits, all the transits for the month, and some other supporting data as usual. First, I want to update everyone on Serena's health. She's home, and while things are not easy or really good, they are better. They are better than they were last month, with a couple hospitalizations and even scary hospital visits. So I just wanted to let everybody know, especially since the outpouring of sympathy and compassion around that has been very uplifting, very supportive. I'm so grateful to everybody who's been there to support us both through this process. So yeah, all the major lunar events this month happen near midnight, as the new moon and the full moon could be, depending on where you are in the world, it could be September 2nd or September 3rd. The full moon could be September 17th or the 18th. I'll talk about them the way they are in like my personal time zone, but just a caveat on that. It's eclipse season. That's kind of the main astrological news. The full moon, September 17th, 18th, and the next new moon, October 2nd, are eclipses. Eclipses kind of set a 6-month tone with their theme, and they themselves can be turbulent or highly charged times. Rich with dynamic tension, distortion, and don't want to generalize them as negative. Some traditions do. In the Vedic tradition, you don't even want to go outside in an eclipse or be in that light. It'll affect you, and then the bad things will happen. And that may or may not be superstitious. We don't know. I think eclipses are very, very charged times. Very charged times, but we have to be careful with them. So we'll look at that. We'll look at that carefully. This video. The new moon aligns in constellation Leo. And it aligns across from a Saturn in Aquarius. So, let's see. If you thought it was Virgo season, let's see what we're looking at here. So here is an orientation to the sky, the planets and the stars as we would see them kind of astronomically. And the sun and moon align in Leo. And the only thing happening in Virgo this month is that Venus will meet with the South Node. Pretty close conjunction for the new moon. We'll talk more about what that means. And just to examine the heavens all around, we have Pluto moving retrograde into more towards Sagittarius, although Pluto moves pretty slowly. He's just kind of wobbling, but happens to be wobbling at this time retrograde back towards Sag. We have Saturn in late Aquarius, also wobbling. And I missed Ceres here, so we'll go back to Central Sag. And dwarf planet Ceres is the largest mass, by far the largest mass in the asteroid belt, and is since being so close to us, really is something I've been kind of trying to include a lot more and study and consider. We probably know the least about Ceres as a dwarf planet and Eris, the somewhat newer discoveries. Even though we've known about Ceres for longer than we've known about Pluto. Anywho, moving forward to Pisces, there's Neptune with the North Node. That's a close enough conjunction that we can say they're going to affect each other. We have the comet Chiron and dwarf planet Eris moving up towards the ecliptic. Neptune also retrograde, and I believe Uranus is retrograde. I think all the planets from Pluto to Uranus are retrograde. And that brings us to Taurus. Aries is empty for the new moon. Uranus, Jupiter, and Mars just barely on the last final degree of Taurus here. In the degree of fixed star Betelgeuse, very fortunate star. That's Taurus. These energies together in Taurus could be generally considered, auspicious together. Although Mars is in making a couple relationships we'll have to look at before we finalize that statement. And then Mercury. Mercury is in Leo. And with that, let's jump in to an examination of the new moon in some more detail. So the moon's in Leo. I think we can say some things about Leo since there's going to be some big Leo energy. Mercury, Sun, and Moon implies that there's not going to be in the most conscious expression and thinking about our experience this month, the experience itself, and our thinking about the experience. The energies saturating those planets is sort of permeating those planets. The light behind them is Leonine. Leo's been a constellation. I mean, it's like Scorpio. It's one of and there are royal stars here, so we know this is kind of like how people started noticing the skies, like as things went past Regulus, like the big things happened. Leo's been a lion since ancient times, Babylon and Sumer. The old words we have for this star group is like the lion. Leo favors processes of personal self-exploration. Personal self-exploration. We can say that Leo does a lot of things, but in all of that, it's exploring creativity and selfhood. It favors the exploration of personhood. It's big, it's fun, it's a little wild. And with Saturn opposing, we may see a bit of that wild side dampened. But nonetheless, Leo is purposeful and tends to be involved. It tends to be active, if a little grandiose at times. And I think the shadow of Leo is just generally understood to be, it's a little selfish. It's a little about itself. So Saturn opposition may bring out flavors of that shadow, but we'll talk a little more about the relationship to Saturn specifically. I just want to say for now about Leo that within the constellation, the star that Sun and Moon are on, and they're on several. They're on Asuhail, which is a star that's well south of the ecliptic, almost like at the southern pole of this, like the celestial pole. And then you'll see also that they're close to Alioth, which is a star that's well north in the sky, part of Ursa Major, the Great Bear. And the one that we're looking at is Zosma, Delta Leo, because, we can go back and see Zosma is right here. Where is Al-Suhail is down here. Vela is just not close enough to the ecliptic. It's not close enough to the ecliptic to really be relevant. And Ursa Major is, where are you? Here we are. Alioth. So we have a really close relationship at 0 degrees 34 arc minutes. And we have an equally close relationship, if you look at this, between Saturn and Anka, Alpha Phoenix. So Anka is an interesting star having to do with resurrection and the Phoenix's journey of rising from its own ashes, new cycles, new things, the old, new again, or what have you. But to look at Zosma, I want to look at Zosma because the sun and moon with Zosma is telling a story that's more important than Saturn's story. In fact, Saturn's story here is only really as relevant as it is this month because it affects sun and moon. So we'll turn to Bernadette Brady when it comes to star knowledge. I favor her over all other sources by leaps and bounds, as everyone who watches my channel knows. Zosma itself, she says, is not feminine, but rather it belongs to those whom the establishment, either directly or indirectly, makes powerless. Generally, it does not belong in the charts of the rich and famous unless they become so victimized. It is present in the charts of victims, of people who are abused by the system. It is not an evil star, but its presence means that the particular planet with which it is connected will potentially be abused in some way. She goes on to say in another section of Brady's Book of Fixed Stars, from which I'm quoting, that, and I quote, "The planet that is involved with Zosma will potentially involve suffering, perhaps through the person's naivete allowing them to be led into a victimizing situation, or perhaps by their working as a social worker or caregiver, they will involve themselves with suffering. This is not a star of glory and fame, but rather of the invisible work with dealing with the victim in oneself or in others." So the positive expression of Zosma includes taking a stand for victims, the oppressed, marginalized peoples. At this time, inner work around excavating our own stories of potential stories of victimhood, and most of us have those. Let's be honest, and all such inner work to reveal the and reconcile and heal is empowered here, and especially work relative to those institutional structures, right? Because Saturn is always going to sort of correlate with and represent like large institutional groups, governments, corporations, the strange intersection between the two. And so this could especially be good for work relative to like institutional social structures and any victimization or adverse experiences that arose around those dynamics. The individual relationship to society here could be examined and healed. And it's likely to bring out the worst from like power structures and institutions of government. It's likely to bring out a little bit of an oppressive streak here. So I think what we can say safely about Sun Moon on Zosma, just looking across the sky at Saturn, is this could trigger several dynamics. This could trigger, for us, victimization issues around institutional structures. It could trigger issues around stories that we have, victim narratives relative to society. If we are the kind of person that blames everything on society, or through difficult and unpleasant experiences with father in early life, then, or mother, if they're difficult enough and she's the dominant parent, and we project those impressions of authority onto society, onto the world. This is all part of the Saturn complex when it comes to Saturn's relationship to Zosma, because the victimization and the working out of trauma and wounding and those narratives around that, and then once we stop the narratives that are kind of perpetuating it and supporting it, we have to actually get into the body and do the healing work. And all of this all of this is also signified by Saturn. Like Saturn in Aquarius is new ways of thinking, new patterns. Saturn on Anka, Alpha Phoenix, is itself about the energy of resurrection, is itself about rising as a phoenix from its own ashes, this mythological alchemy of sort of immortality. And that is connected to these myths that we tell ourselves about how we have been the victim and such who's we point our finger at is the perpetrator. And as long as we're pointing our finger and we're not taking power in the form of responsibility, Saturn, but we're pointing the finger, then there's only the perpetuation of victimhood through even perpetrating it on others. It's a terrible cycle. Zosima connects with this and with extricating from this, with healing this, with working with these dynamics. Jupiter squares, and Jupiter squares indicate the possibility of going too far with something. Just a little over the line. All right, well, without being too negative about stuff, I want to say that expect challenges, delays, and a sort of resistance, too, to institutional authority, a resistance to being told what to do, to kind of be natural, especially around the time of the new moon, and maybe all month. The new moon, I want to note, trines to Ceres in Sagittarius. And we're still studying Ceres. So in Sag, she seems to connect things to like the broader human experience. There seems to be a very feminine bent to her. And there seems to be a sort of meticulous, kind of like a careful energy here. But she connects to there's a higher octave of the moon to sort of the collective consciousness and the general humanity within issues and of issues, to the humanity of things. So very much an inner planet, very much about the ground level experience, not so much like an abstract outer influence, which, these impersonal influences. Ceres tends to, I think, touch the heartstrings, and in Sag across from Mars may bring a sense of competitiveness if she's anything like the moon. But I want to be very reserved in my statements about Ceres. We're still studying her, and like I said, about Eris and Ceres, we know decidedly less than we know about other astronomical bodies in astrology. We have a weird situation with lunar nodes, my friends, because we have Venus and Neptune. And speaking of octaves, Venus is an inner planet, concerned with appreciation, love, relationship, all these things. Beauty, in a word, and Neptune is an outer planet, a sort of higher octave associated with love and beauty, and more like agape love, but like a spiritual principle of oneness and it's kind of inclusion, togetherness, kind of relationship to Venus there. And this places a particular emphasis and a focus on these planets, on Neptune and on Venus. But at the same time, it distorts and it diminishes their benefic qualities. And I give Neptune about 50-50. Amazing benefic, terrible malefic. It's a really hard planet to deal with in that regard, but it may have some neutral, I'm sure it has neutral qualities too, but Venus is predominantly benefic. And my point about this is that the benefic qualities of Venus and the benefic qualities of Neptune tend to be diminished when they're in contact with the nodes. It can even highlight their shadow side. And this could get catty or manipulative, emotionally distorted, and I think it could also make for misimpressions, like strange infatuations, or like false takes on love and attraction. But I think we can be also, especially with Venus in Virgo, because Neptune is well at home in Pisces, and the North Node tends to, if anything, kind of lean things towards and kind of fixate, maybe create a little obsessive energy around. But South Node really tends to rob us of what it's touching. It tends to take from us in order to orient us to our higher truth or spiritual path. That is the textbook understanding of South Node. So that's like what it's always doing. And with Venus in Virgo, we need to be on the lookout here for critical or neurotic or back to victimhood feelings, because Venus in Virgo does have the tendency to be a little picky, a little fussy, but the shadow side of it is really actually just critical and overcritical and neurotic. And this Venus South Node is T-squaring a Ceres Mars opposition. We sort of mentioned the Ceres Mars opposition. I think this could be a hard month, even though Mars is on the most fortunate star, very close to Betelgeuse, the best star in the sky for success, right here between Taurus and Gemini. But Mars is square up to the lunar nodes, which always puts a planet in a little bit of an awkward and a little bit of a torn position. So we might not see this month, even though Mars is, symbolizing movement forward and progress and assertive kind of drive and those courageous energies of doing things. It takes courage to do things, my friends. Mars this month, I just don't know. With these powerful planets eclipsed, giving weight and giving kind of importance to the nodes beyond the weight and importance they always carry. I don't see movement forward as being easy, and I see that with Mars square to Neptune. Well, Neptune squares to Mars are usually good for really vivid expressions of theater, cinema, art, kind of Neptune squares tend to confuse things, though, and Mars doesn't quite have his best side out with these nodal squares. So yeah, I would say relative to Mars being in this usually auspicious position, right in the 0 degree, fortunate and successful Betelgeuse, I would say let's put some caveats on that this month, and depending on how that strikes your chart and affects you, things may not be so straightforward. They may not be as easy as they seem, like they should be this month. Mercury is worth mentioning. We have a square to Uranus, which tends to bring out insight as it brings out anxieties. We have Mercury with Chiron and Eris in Pisces, and trining, and this will connect Mercury to shadow work, to healing work, to spiritual healing, to the process of reconciling our own darkness. accepting our own dual nature, accepting, Mercury and Leo through self-exploration, and connected to Chiron, Eris, and Pisces, very meditative, very contemplative set of stars. This will really should give us a lot of access to our own kind of two truths, if you will. Two truths. There's always two truths. Anytime you think you've isolated the truth, you're usually just missing the other one if you think there's one truth. But, without getting overly philosophical, I don't want to make this top heavy. The trine here connects conscious thinking to the very deep processes of healing and through shadow work. Should be a great month for inner work and for self-exploration. Eris empowers Mercury with a lot of work ethic and the kind of nervous energy that through a trine becomes a lot easier to harness and channel constructively. It just, there might be anxiety this month, but we shouldn't have a problem finding stuff to do with it. Or pulling those threads, following those golden threads inside to see, like, where does this feeling come from, right? What's it rooted in? Yeah, that's it. That's the kind of medicine this trine implies. So I think these are the major features of the new moon. We do have a Uranus trine to Pluto, which is in and of itself notable. It connects the energies of change with the energies of total transformation. For some, I think this month will be very healing. Generally speaking, it could be illuminating. It could be illuminating to how we heal from the abuses that we've received in our lives. The how we interrupt and repattern our inner dialogue, our self-dialogue, if it's a victim narrative. We could really make insight here. Or we could find ourselves witnessing the oppressive displays. It could illuminate how we perpetuate abuse ourselves. And we need to see these mechanisms to interrupt and resolve them. I'm not trying to make this a polarized issue where some of us will do healing work and others will, smack their children. No, it's a lot more nuanced than that. I'm painting with very broad strokes here. For some others, it could represent the energy of all-out conflict, though, in its own right. And maybe that all-out conflict is going to be expressed artistically. That's a Pisces-Leo function. When the two of them make contact, as in the Mercury trine to Eris, and the placement of the sun and moon, sun at home in Leo, only really matched right now by Neptune in Pisces, unless you count Aquarius as Saturn's territory. I don't, but that's okay. These aren't the points I'm here to make. The points I'm here to make is that this is a volatile position for a new moon to be in. It's a vulnerable position, and it's going to bring up certain processes and sensitivities that are going to be uncomfortable. So expect it. The Saturn opposition, empowered by a Jupiter square, I think we can brace ourselves for lessons this month, and I think we can steel ourselves by relaxing and being flexible, right? Because it's in many ways the, being able to work with things in a fluid and dynamic way, rather than trying to stand and with that seeming strength that's actually brittle and breaks in the face of greater force. The luminaries are very powerful here, but Saturn on Anka, it does have the potential to represent greater force in oppressive positions. Yeah, with that, let's move on to the transits. Okay, so here are the transits between September 2nd the new moon, and September 17th, the full moon. I want to say Mars square to Neptune right as the new moon is happening is going to be really impactful. So I mentioned vivid displays, vivid expression, confuses drive and motivation. Neptune squares tend to confuse, and Mars has to do with our movement forward and our taking new steps. We could be really confused about direction in life for this lunar cycle, and that's okay. Neptune's on a fixed star, Sept, which is not a happy star. It's a very brilliant star in as far as it engenders insight, and this could engender spiritual insight. Many people this month may find clearer direction on their spiritual path, or alternatively, a need for clearer direction on their spiritual path. You know, some people will find both, but Sept is a star associated with difficulty, associated with emotional sadness, heartbreak, and the like. So just be aware of that for the new moon. This connects to Mars, the planet of our courage, exploratory nature, our sort of like stereotypically thought of as masculine. It's kind of outward moving, you know, sporty energy. It's an accomplishing energy. So yeah, as mentioned, vivid displays, but also confusion. And moving on to the next really relevant thing, it looks like we have Venus in Virgo conjoined to South Node and opposite North Node right on the 3rd and 4th, late in the day. And this is going to connect to old relationship patterns. It's going to connect people to the familiar and the habitual. It has the potential to take. The South Node tends to remove from our lives what isn't in alignment with the highest karmic purposes. So it could be a time of relationship review. Venus loves and appreciates, and the South Node takes away. That's not an easy combo. So be aware around the 3rd and 4th, and just, be sensitive to those alignments is some solid advice. We have series of transits next. Mercury trine Eris. We have Mercury square Uranus, and the Sun opposite to Saturn. Now, why do I put these together? Because they're inner planets. Here we have Mercury and Sun, and they're connected to outer planets. That's one similarity. Another is that Eris symbolizing the forces of disruption and chaos, the syncopated beat, that which disrupts, and Uranus, that which changes, the abrupt, the unexpected. They're both disruptive influences, and it's worth noting that Sun opposite Saturn not only represents order and conformity, rigidity, and the things that keep kind of cohesion, keep social groups together, and does a lot of important things. I don't want to mischaracterize Saturn as bad. I think we're past that, I hope. But I want to say that taken as a whole, Saturn is in Aquarius, and a Sun opposite Saturn doesn't necessarily it sets order against kind of the consciousness, the conscious experience of life is like against the order of things, and the mind is then affected by like Yahoo, the chaos and the wild rumpus with Uranus and Eris in the mix. So I see the time period here with Venus square the node. Like none of this is easy so far. You're getting this. This isn't going to be an easy week, but we do get a break towards the waxing quarter moon. On the 9th and 10th, there's no real major activity. So, take a nap or something. Let's look at that waxing quarter moon. Oh yeah, we're already in the right program. Waxing quarter moon. Excellent. Here we go. Let me get my head where it belongs. All right, we've done it, fam. We have the waxing moon chart, and we have a Sun, Moon, Jupiter, Saturn grand cross. You'll see. I could draw that out. Here's let's see, Saturn, and Jupiter, and Moon, and Sun and Moon. Yeah, that connects the lunar cycle to the cycles of worldly power, financial cycles, and just the plans, again, governments, financial institutions, corporations, the big kind of central cogs in this whole world thing when it comes to temporal power and like money movement. It's going to connect the cycle to that as it emerges and develops. It'll be, this will be linked in the collective consciousness, in the narrative for most of us. Jupiter's on Bellatrix, and Saturn's still on Ka, very closely. Bellatrix is like the dark star in Orion. Orion's a very uplifted constellation, having to do with like very dignified themes. It's where we find Betelgeuse. But Bellatrix it portends success. It's victory, but through working with the shadow. And again, on the Saturn placement, on Ka is Alpha Phoenix, and it signifies resurrection and rebirth. Although there's nothing new under the sun, as most people have no idea about in Aquarius. We always think something new and something novel is happening. And I love that on Ka is like in late Aquarius, because after we go through all the Aquarian work of like reinventing the wheel and doing those important Aquarian things, and reinventing the wheel is an important Aquarian thing. But then we realize like, it's the same old shit all over again. So that's a classic. And as we spiral through outer space here on planet Earth, I think it's very important to remember that, things change and ages change and manifestations change, but the basic experience is spiral. It's a spiral, friends. We're just doing this. There's always a spiral. So you can have all these different manifestations and expressions of it, and they're all beautiful, but it's always a spiral. So nothing new under the sun, right? Saturn in Aquarius. It's kind of associated lesson on fixed star on Ka. And I want to put that down. I want to get back to the transits graph. Oh yeah, here we are. So moving on from the waxing moon, there's going to be another Sun Mercury series where Mercury sextiles Mars as the Sun squares Jupiter. And this will happen on the 11th and 12th of September. Mercury sextile Mars usually lends itself to quick thinking, sharp wits, high tempers, kind of high strung energy. And the Sun square Jupiter is a success signature. It portends a good energy to start projects with. It tends to go too far, but I would say this is a good time to start almost any kind of project that has to do with like working with your hands or building or creating. The Leo Sun and Mercury are going to be connected to the Martian and Jupiter energies. It's very creative, and Mars sextile Mercury really favors reflexes and coordination and actually doing physical things. they could work very well together. Whether it's sports or crafts, it doesn't really matter. And then we move on. We have Venus trine Jupiter. And this takes us towards the middle of the month. We're here on the 14th and 15th, Venus trine Jupiter, another success signature. And these are in Earth signs, both Venus and Jupiter are in Earth signs. Where's Venus? Venus is in Virgo, Jupiter's in Taurus. So, and Venus is separate from the South Node at this point. So we have a really good period of time here. We have some success signatures. Venus trine Jupiter, success. Mars trine, sextile Mercury, bit of success. Sun, Jupiter, success. So we have a good period here to start projects, but I want to caution that Mars is square the lunar nodes. So, I mean, we can talk a little about that generally as movement forward, or kind of direct motion forward, being split or pulled or dichotomized, drawn in multiple directions. Things will not be easy from the point of view of Mars symbolizing progress. So for those who are familiar, who keep their eye open for Venus trine Jupiter as a great time to start new things, start new projects, and who keep their eye on Jupiter as a financial signifier and a power signifier, a spiritual signifier, it could look like this was ideal, but the Mars square nodes really compromises that. It should be a generally uplifted time for people at ground level, depending on how this strikes your personal chart. The latter half of, or let's say this second week of September, should be a lot easier astrologically, just generally with the energies, than the first week. All right, so with that, we come to the 17th of September, and that's the date of the full moon. The full moon's September 17th. 2024 is kind of the fruitional expression of the new moon, where if the new moon was the seed, the full moon would be the fruit in this tree or fruiting plant metaphor. But I think we're all pretty familiar with that idea by now. I just want to orient everyone to the idea that this is about kind of manifestation, about what wants to happen. So, what is the first thing I see? Well, it's an eclipse. So we'll come back to that. I have some ideas to unpack later about this eclipse. We see a Sun, Pluto, Uranus, Earth grand trine. And this is going to signify change and transformation at a core level. Very core level. Remember that for the waxing moon in Scorpio Ophiuchus, there was a grand cross between Jupiter, Saturn, Moon, and Sun, connecting the cycle to cycles of worldly power. Now here for the full moon, what do we have? Change, transformation, upheaval, and Mercury opposite Saturn. We have a lot of Saturn opposition. So just to refresh, the new moon was opposite Saturn for its alignment. Back on September 2nd, we aligned opposite Saturn. Now for the full moon, Mercury is opposite Saturn. So you have like a very important repeating theme here, especially because the relationship is rather close at 0 degrees 31 arc minutes. What else I see is that Venus has moved away from the South Node and is residing in the territory of fixed star Spica Alpha Virgo. Fixed star Alpha Virgo, Spica. And Spica is a very blessed star, a very powerful and beautiful star, and is very good to Venus in particular. And this is signifying success, gain, opportunity, love, good fortune, all those good Venusian things that we like when Venus is unimpeded are going to be emphasized by Spica. But there are processes signified by Eris and Chiron. And remember, this whole lunar cycle goes right back to Zosma and vulnerability, even up to and including victimhood. So we may not be out of the woods with that yet, but we may be empowered to appreciate the healing journey. Very big on an inner level. C2 Venus trine Jupiter. And when Venus trines Jupiter, it accentuates the blessings of Spica. One thing that Eris tends to do is, like Pluto, she polarizes. And this could polarize our kind of good side and our bad side, or our experiences, like what we like and what we don't like, especially if it wounded us. This could really polarize experience. So we want to be aware of that and lean into that kind of general expansive mindset and that accepting mindset, rather than retreating into our own fears and doubts and shame about being wounded. Life wounds pretty indiscriminately, and it just becomes a question of what kind of wounds we're dealing with, and which wounds we have to heal from. Part of the nodal, and I'm talking about the September 2nd new moon, the nodal alignment where Venus with South Node is opposite Neptune with North Node. This could really confuse issues around idealizing. That's a Neptune function. It could idealize our idea about just like a nice life. Like, we didn't get a nice life. We didn't get a life we didn't get Willy Wonka's golden ticket. We got tricks and treats, and some of us, if we were lucky. So we want to be aware at this time that our struggle is not different, that our struggle is universal, that we're here on Earth as part of a human family, and we're spiraling through deep space. This is a chaotic place. This isn't like a platonic harmonious zone. You're in outer space, man, and anything can happen, as we know, and it often does. That's a Yogi Berra quote, if I ever heard one. Anything can happen, and it often does, because you need an astrologer to tell you that stuff. But I am serious about one thing. Eris and Chiron together is a very sensitive influence to be pushing against Venus in Virgo. And this could make us self-critical. So we want to lean in to the blessing of Spica and our self-appreciation and the universal nature of unpleasant experience. It's about 50% of life from what I can figure. All right. It's an eclipse. I said I had some thoughts to share on this. We have the moon within 18 degrees of North Node and sun within 18 degrees of South Node. So usually, fam, I look at Bernadette Brady's brilliant Saros series report, and I think to myself, I should read that to the people for their benefit. But this month, folks, I thought to myself, I have a hard time trusting these tropicalists. And Bernadette Brady, he has a tropicalist. I looked into the charts themselves, and I have a couple observations. So first, I want to share what Bernadette Brady says about this eclipse. She labels this Sero Series 8 South, and she states that it began on April 1st, 1718 at about 15 minutes into that day, and will go until the year 2962. She observes that the sun and moon meet in Aries. We know what that means. It's Pisces. So right away, her observation that Saturn is on the new moon and Mars midpoint becomes less relevant because Mars isn't ruling this. Neptune's ruling it. When I look at Neptune, it says that Neptune is in 14 Taurus. So obviously, it's not. And obviously, we need to look a little deeper into this. Let's start where she starts. Separation and loss, to be parted, to finish something and to feel sad at its completion. Physical injury is also possible through overstraining one's strength. This is not the time to undertake strenuous activities. Okay. So it's a hampered Aries moon. It's an Aries moon opposed by Saturn on the sun, moon, Mars midpoint. All right. Well, that's nice, Bernadette, but I pulled this chart myself with all the dwarf planets, like all the trimmings and fixins, and I wanted to really deep dive this thing and see what was going on. If you're paying attention, congratulations. You'll notice this chart is a little different. It's 31st of March, not April 1st. 23:28, not 15 minutes in. The actual adjusted time of the topocentric alignment from the South Pole here. Just I get a little bit different time than Brady. I'm assuming she's using geocentric reckoning. I didn't actually look into it too deeply. What I did look into deeply was this chart. This chart is not talking about separation and loss, and I'm not going to break this down. I'm only going to call your attention to some of the key features. Here we have the aspects in the chart, and we see that sun and moon meet for a 0-degree relationship, and we see the Saturn Sun Mars midpoint is actually almost like 1 degree away. There's another 0-degree relationship in this chart, and it's Uranus conjoined to dwarf planet Haumea. Haumea is a higher octave of Neptune. The new moon is in Pisces, resonant with Haumea, and the relationship between Haumea, Uranus, and the new moon is the only opposition that the new moon is making. So in other words, we're not talking about a midpoint Saturn opposition of 1 degree, but we're talking about an actual relationship between the sun and moon and these bodies. And it's the, if you look at the aspectarian here, you'll see that it's some of the only relationships that sun and moon are making. We also have a south node on Shyot, the star that Neptune's on right now. We have a south node on Shyot, 0 degrees. These 0-degree relationships in this chart are, I feel, much more important than the observations that Bernadette Brady was making about Saturn, Sun, Moon, Mars midpoints, especially because Mars isn't in the dispositor chain here. It doesn't really matter. We can't get inside Bernadette Brady's head and understand what she thought, but we can look at this chart and make some observations. So, what do we see? With Sun, Moon, Uranus, Haumea, Sun, Moon, Uranus, Haumea, there's a sign of breakthrough and very high mystical orders of thought and inspiration. Very, very, very high orders of thought. However, that insight and the breakthrough signature is itself eclipsed. So these insights may come in the form of challenges or distortions that need to be navigated, or they may come as resultant of challenges and distortions. We have South Node with fixed star Shiat, 0 degrees, 0 minutes aligned, sign of dealing with past traumas, sorrows, and heartbreaks. It connects the karma of the cycle to resolving loose ends, and it's a signifier of mystical and transcendental orders of thought. North Node and South Node are both connected to signifiers of mystical and transcendental orders of thought. We have all these higher octaves. There's a sort of higher octave connection when we take, with Shiat is like implying higher octaves of insight and thought. Uranus Haumea, like higher, next level up. And the Pisces origin is all about higher orders of thought, about spiritual thought, about oneness, about transcendental strains of thought and streams of awareness and consciousness that put us in touch with the big mind, as Zen calls it, that mind of expansive consciousness in the universe that can inform and delight us. Is this profoundly connected to those more spiritual processes within those deeper flows. All right. So when we look at this eclipse and we look at it in the light of that chart examined through our own eyes and not through, Bernadette Brady's, I come to some very different conclusions. And I would say this eclipse series holds the energy of unexpected change. It's going to hold the energy of abrupt happenings, unusual flashes of insight, the possible reemergence of old wounds for review and resolution. It may emphasize prior challenges and even those thought to be resolved, which could be activated again. And to that, my friends, I can only say, kill the weeds and pull the roots. It's your garden. It may, this eclipse may act to radicalize and stoke aggressions in vivid ways. Mars and Uranus are a spicy combo, and in that chart from that we looked at a moment ago from the 1700s, and the origin chart of this eclipse series. Mars was actually on Algol for the origin of this eclipse series, Mars on Algol, where Uranus is now making passage. Beta Perseus, the Lilith star, one of my favorite stars, but very, very, very spicy influence, volatile. So Mars and Uranus are in combo here. For this eclipse, and I think that overall we can see with the oppositions, it could be challenging. Even with this grand trine, we have a grand trine for this eclipse: Sun, Pluto, Uranus. For an eclipse, good night. Like, this could be disruptive. This could be another generally disruptive and highly charged month, my friends. I know we've had enough of that. It's been one thing after another since freaking COVID. Catalytic of change, even unto total transformation. Could involve martial endeavors or wars taking place that polarize the world. I mean, it doesn't take an astrologer to tell you that's a possibility. The new moon saw opposition to Saturn. The full moon sees Mercury oppose Saturn. And this could be portents of difficult change. There could be confrontation of the shadows in our lives. It could be confrontation of the shadows of society and of those long shadows of institutions. It could be symbolic of the struggle towards liberation, unusual expressions and displays. It could be symbolic of anxiety, especially around resistance to changes. change symbolized by Saturn. So it could be institutional change. It could be policy change. It could be change coming down from the top and people just doing what they're told. And that could really rub everything the wrong way this month. So what is supported here is very nonconformist, pretty free-spirited, outstanding energies, very, very deep support, and a lot of powerful energy around change and transformation. The process of breaking new ground, exploring new territory, novel discoveries, personal breakthrough, and most importantly, most overriding in the repeating symbols of this lunar cycle is the power to resolve the past and leave it behind, leave it where it belongs. And see that this full moon, September 17th, the moon with Neptune and the North Node indicates a kind of conscious connection to our guidance moving forward. So be open to dreams around this time, omens, signs, and just strange feelings from the universe. Pay attention around this time for things to be meaningful, a la Moon and Neptune with North Node. It's a very sensitive, very weird influence. It's a very strange thing for people who aren't born under this Neptunian sign. It's a good time to listen for messages of guidance. And with that, I'd like to shift to the transits graph of the transits between the full moon and the next new moon, October 2nd. So we have this Mercury opposite Saturn, almost perfect as the moon is full. This kind of pits the conscious self against the system. It does bring us into contact with serious and focused abilities within consciousness and thought. But at the same time, on the 18th, as Mercury's opposing Saturn, Venus opposes Eris. And this kind of challenges us to integrate the shadow in ourselves. We may, with these inner planets connected to these darker outer planets, these heavier outer planets, we may see in other people things that we need to resolve within ourselves. That's a really, really just easy signature of the opposition to Venus and Mercury. We may encounter the need for appreciation of the shadow in ourselves or other people around this time. And then we shift to a whole other series of transits, which almost immediately following that Venus opposition to Eris on the 19th, very early on the 19th of September, we have Sun trine Uranus, Sun opposite Neptune, Sun trine Pluto, and in the middle of all this, Mercury squares Jupiter. And we have all of this happen. The Sun makes contact to all three outer planets, exact major contact in a period of 4 days, taking a total of 5 days. From the 18th to the 23rd, well, what can we say? Uranus, which is on Algol, fixed star Algol, with the placement of Mars from the origin chart of the Eclipse series, really, really lit up. We could say that the positive expression of that is making change, taking bold steps to make change, the risks necessary for change. Let's take them. This is a great time. Then we have Sun opposite Neptune, and Neptune's on Shiat. We could be, by this alignment, we could be challenged by higher dimensional reality. Or, a la Neptune, we could be challenged by lower dimensional reality. But accept the high challenge and reconcile your life with your dreams. That's especially in the context of this this Uranus trine. What we want to do is ride this wave to deep personal development. Because Mercury square Jupiter makes plans. It makes big plans, but it can overshoot. It can bite off more than it can chew, but it is a success sign. And the Sun trine to Pluto, it really likes to shift the narrative, especially following on the heels of Uranus and Neptune transits. Something here may give way. The previous solar transits have set up deep processes which will complete before the Sun contacts the South Node. We can see that the Sun does contact the South Node if we shift our attention to the end of September, right around the time of the next new moon, which will, of course, be a solar eclipse. And before that happens, as the Sun approaches, as we're winding down, you can think of this as the themes of the last eclipse 6 months ago. We're just really bringing it home right now during the 18th through 23rd of September period. And it's going to be a very dynamic, very deep process. And hopefully we can really integrate. The last 6 months and anchor it, the changes that have been asked of us and the evolutionary journeys and leaps and maneuvers we've been asked to make. And following on this series of outer planet transits to the Sun, we have a Venus square to Pluto. And I'll lump that in with a sort of related transit that happens here, which is Mercury trine to Uranus. And we actually have another series with Mercury, Neptune, and Mercury, Pluto that I'm going to kind of split these into two, because right in the middle we have the waning quarter moon to examine. So just leading up to that waning quarter moon, I think we can take a Mercury trine to Uranus and a Venus square to Pluto as portents of personal change and transformation. That's Pluto and Uranus. So we have inner planets connected to this change and transformation. There could be insight. There could be flashes of recognition of higher truth. These are themes that you may have mentioned. You may have noticed I mentioned this month a couple times. Higher self, kind of genius coming through. It could be a real hallmark of Mercury-Uranus contact in trine. So we may have access to the insight we need to succeed, and that's important because right after the waning quarter moon chart, we'll take a look at Mercury as it makes opposition to Neptune, confusing and trine to Pluto. Going to change whether you're confused or not. Something about thinking, something about the processes of the conversation, right? Mercury in mundane astrology always represents just the zeitgeist, the dialogue. This looks like an impactful month. It looks like an impactful month where the Sun and Mercury here are just making rapid passage of all the outer planets. So let's look at that waning quarter moon. We're down here at the end of September, and the waning quarter moon happens 24th September for people who like to make that thorough study. I'll just leave this chart up for a couple minutes. You can check it out. And this could symbolize an attraction to the past or a sort of reminiscent kind of reflection. The whole grand trine is very catalytic of change and, oh boy, transformation. But this could be confused by the nodes. This could be confused by, how we feel about the past. This could be confused by Neptune with North Node opposed, who generally acts to confuse things. And that's what we're looking at next. When we go back to the transits, we're gonna see, the first thing we're gonna see is that Mercury opposes Neptune exactly and trines Pluto. And the process of change and transformation signified by the month since the full moon. We have, like I said, all this outer planet activity. Good night. I can't draw this month. I'm having a hard time talking this month. Thanks for everyone bearing with me. Thanks to everyone for just sticking this out and figuring maybe I'm going somewhere with all this. All right, friends. So we're back. And so we did talk about these two transits, the Neptune and Pluto transits of Mercury, before the waning moon examination. And that brings us to this clump at the end of September, which is kind of like the last thing going on in the transits this month. And we'll look forward to the next new moon. We have the Sun with South Node opposite North Node, and we have Mercury there at the same time, just as Mars trines Saturn. With Sun and Mercury eclipsed, this could be a challenging time to deal with a Mars trine Saturn. Mars trine Saturn is great for long-term effort. It's great for putting our energy towards projects or anything we need to focus on building, focus on accomplishing, focus on moving forward, progress. Over time, it's good for directing attention. It's good for directing will. It's good for directing force over time in a sustained or focused way. But with the nodes here in the eclipse close, there's got to be an understood caveat, which is that anything that we experience around this time is going to be colored by Sun, our general core and source of life and consciousness, the kind of energy around which of awareness and perception that we base our existence. When it gets eclipsed by the South Node, sometimes we have a hard time perceiving clearly or perceiving things as they are. And as we move towards the next new moon, we can actually just segue into looking at that chart. What we see is a very close Virgoan solar eclipse. A very close Virgoan solar eclipse. And this is of the nature previously described during the full moon segment of Brady's Saros series. I believe it's 8 South. Don't quote me on that. I'm not sure. But it's the same Saros series, of course, as the September 17th full moon. I'm not going to analyze this chart now, but I will break down a little of what I see. We have an eclipsed new moon, T-square, a Ceres Mars opposition. Ceres Mars opposition with Mars on fixed star Sirius, the brightest star, and in grand trine to Venus and Saturn. So Mars very activated after coming out of his sort of wobbly relationship to the lunar nodes, not in as intense a square this month, and empowered by Sirius and a grand trine to Saturn, Venus. Wow, thanks. Thanks for hanging with me through all that. Sleep has been pretty challenged lately, and I just appreciate everybody staying with all the I think I called planets by other planets' names like 10 times in this video. But enough about that. Let's see what's relevant. I was recently part of a roundtable discussion on Mercury and Venus and the rulers of Virgo and Libra. There's a link in the description below for you to find that conversation. It was interesting, and a good look at kind of who really rules Virgo, which is always a valid question, always an interesting question. It made me want to get back to my dialogue series, which has been on hold. Speaking of putting extraneous things down for a while, just for my mental health and being a home caregiver. And speaking of that, again, I will flash the link to Serena's GoFundMe, her ongoing journey to receive disability in for her debilitating, painful diabetic complications. Sweet Serena, you're going to make it. And thank you to everybody who's been so supportive, so amazingly supportive. In other news, I'll be teaching, co-teaching Uranus course at Dr. Danny's Astrology School. We'll be looking at just sort of an overview of the planet Uranus. Very excited to be invited to guest speak, guest teach. Thank you, Dr. Danny, and I'm looking forward to meeting everybody. Some of you I'm sure I know already, and some of you I look forward to making your acquaintance. And I'll also be a guest on Sumerian Astrology's YouTube channel in September. I think keep your eyes open for that. I don't know when it'll release or how Abby does her production schedule, but I'm very excited. I have the highest respect for Abby Quinn at Sumerian Astrology. She's one of the brilliant lights on YouTube and in the astrology world. All right. So I'm very excited about being a guest on Abby's channel. I want to be sure to hype that. But I'm always excited about my own work and my own site, One Sky Astro. There's a story about me, my journey with astrology. If you'd like to know more about me, there's a story about why astrology is the way it is today, and we get into why I do things sidereally. So if you're curious about a little history of astrology and just kind of why people might do things like this, why it wouldn't be obvious to go the mainstream route, that story is on my website. My work combines the evolutionary paradigm with the true sidereal zodiac. And it's just so consistently amazing to me, and I would say consistently amazing to my clients. I get great feedback. So if you're curious about that work, please do visit my site. And yeah, the community, there's a couple community hubs on the social medias, and I administrate one of them. It's called Radical Astrology, and you're invited. If you have watched this whole video to this point, you should just say that in the comments and you'll be admitted immediately. Now, you'll have to answer a couple questions to prove you're not a robot, but this is a place where practitioners and interested people, students, and just anyone who wants to keep their finger on the pulse of the conversation about constellational and true life, sky, sidereal, truth, astrology, whatever. Who cares what anyone calls it? Too many distinctions. But 13 sign astrology, let's not forget that. Oh my goodness, I made it. I did it. We have got through a video, and now we're at the end, the part where I say thank you and goodbye, fam. I need a nap. I love you all. I'll see you this month or next month or whenever our paths cross again. Ciao.